This conference will now be recorded.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our weekly board chair check-in and update meeting. My name is Will Marie Newton, and I will be moderating this call. In order to avoid background noise, I ask that you please mute yourself if you're not speaking. However, you can unmute yourself if you would like to ask a question, or you can type it into the chat box. If you're calling in from your cell phone, please take a moment to physically mute your cell phone, as I'm unable to mute you from my computer unless I mute all participants. Just as a reminder, this meeting is being recorded and will be archived on CABE's website under services. Thank you.
Thanks, Will Marie, and want to wish you a happy birthday. And I'm sure everybody there is out there is wishing you happy birthday as well. Hope you had a great time yesterday.
I did, thank you.
So today we'll get started as we usually do with an update. I'll talk a little bit. I don't know if Patrice or any other members of the staff also have some updates. And then we'll get into talking. We have two school nurses here who we very much appreciate coming on this call to tell us, what they foresee happening. I'll ask a few questions, then we'll open it up as we always do to the board chairs to ask their questions. Obviously, you can either speak up generally or put something in the chat room if you have a question. And after that, Patrice always leads us in the board chair share, and we'll talk about what's going on in individual districts, and our two nurses, Sharlene and Kathy, can certainly stay on and listen if they'd like to. Nothing secret here. So I just wanted to address this issue that came up with some of our board chairs about the lists of school districts and what's going on, which of them are going to hybrid, which are going to totally reopen, and which are doing totally remote. As far as we know, there are only 3 that are going to totally remote, and that's New Haven, unless they change their minds or the commissioner doesn't grant them a waiver, Highville Charter in New Haven, and the Woodstock Academy. They're all going to remote. The information that was printed in the Hartford Current yesterday was based on information that the superintendents had sent in around August 11th. So obviously it's a little behind. I talked to the commissioner in one of our calls with him yesterday about this, and he said he'd like to get some kind of a website set up with an interactive map that would show exactly where schools are, because obviously some are starting hybrid for high school and everybody in, excuse me, for the elementary schools. They don't have that yet, but it would show the percentage of students in each of those situations. The person who I talked to yesterday, a reporter for the New Haven Register, not the New Haven Register, but the Current, Stephen Good, is trying to keep up with what's going on in different districts. So I told him that some of our board chairs felt that they weren't adequately represented or accurately represented on what the Current had out. So I sent out an email to all the board chairs yesterday saying what's going on, and that you can get in touch with Steve Good either by his phone number, which I posted, or just shoot him an email. He's very interested in making sure that that's accurate. Those are the major updates I have. I know people are still asking about the numbers that are put into the metrics on the chart that SDE provided to determine where you should be as far as which of the models to use. To the best of my knowledge, that website is not up yet. It's going to be done by the Department of Health I think with some SDE help. It was supposed to be up this week. I have not heard about it, and certainly as soon as we hear anything, we'll provide that information to you. I think at this point, you're best off relying on the information that was sent out a week ago. That was last Thursday night. Sharlene Russell Tucker was helping us with it, and we certainly made sure that everybody got that. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Patrice for any updates she might have.
Thanks, Bob. The update I have is around the funding that will be coming to help with the reopening costs. We anticipate, based on what the department has said, that any day now districts will get their actual dollar amounts, but we know in general how the money that the governor committed to will be distributed. There'll be $20 million towards increased transportation costs, and that will be distributed to all districts based on district enrollment. Every district will receive funding for the PPE and cleaning costs that they indicated in the survey that was done probably about a month ago. And districts that have 40% or more free and reduced price lunch, which is 69 districts, will share in the $50 million that's allocated for academic and support staff. The devices that the state is ordering for distribution to districts that are not yet one-on-one will begin to arrive in October. The department has been very clear that that is when they will begin to arrive, because there is a worldwide shortage of devices at this point. So those are on order, and it will be an ongoing process in terms of when they're delivered. That's it, Bob.
Fine, thanks, Patrice. Any other staff member or anybody else who has an update? Okay, I see we already have a question about sports. Thank you, Karen. Some districts are waiting to see what happens. As you remember, last Thursday we had, boy, my allergies are bad today. We had Glenn Lungarini speak to us. And then right after we hung up, basically, the Department of Health said they want to meet with CIAC, and they were not happy about the decision made by CIAC. Today's newspapers were reporting that CIAC and the Department of Health are supposed to meet today, so there may be some updates later in the day. As far as we know, school districts are making their own decisions. There was an article today, I believe it was in the Current, about what different school districts are doing. So you might want to look there for more information. At this time, I'd like to start the discussion with our two nurses. We have Kathy Neelon, who is on the board of the Connecticut Association of School Nurses. She is currently the president. She has been the program chair. She's worked 6 years in acute medical surgery and oncology, 18 years in community health, and since 2004 has been the nurse coordinator for the Wallingford Public Schools. And she's been a per diem nurse at Elm Park in Cheshire in the assisted living department. So we welcome you, and thanks for coming on, Kathy. And Sharlene Cedrone has been a registered nurse for 35 years in a variety of medical areas, nearly 20 years as a school nurse in Norwich, working with all the age groups in their public schools. She is working on in a building with only preschool age kids, most of their first time in school, and many of them transitioning from birth to 3 services. So these are two real experts on what's actually happening in the field. And I have a few questions, and then once again, I'd like to ask everybody to ask their questions either in the chat room or speak up, and Will Marie will help us with them. So my first question is, what are you communicating to parents at this point? Obviously, school nurses play a very important role in the schools, in the opening of schools, in helping kids who are subject to IDEA or Section 504. So what's going on? What are you telling parents at this point in your schools? And I'd ask Sharlene to speak up first. That's fine.
Okay, that's fine. As far as me personally, I have not spoken to any parents, but there was a letter that went out from our superintendent to the families, and they basically just stating that we're going to be going hybrid, and there's no specific, and she provided a specific schedule for K through 8 for the that age group, but preschool has not been distributed yet. We're waiting on our principal for that. But immunization should be up to date. That was stated. That's one of my concerns, like how are we going to manage that? But otherwise, that's all we have been providing to them.
Okay, great. Kathy?
Yes, so good morning. So we've been doing a lot of communication actually in Wallingford. We've been communicating with parents since the onset of the shutdown of COVID, with providing them emails through the superintendent's message to parents. Every week we were providing healthcare tips that related to COVID throughout this whole thing, and it continued through some of the summer. We continued to provide information to parents. We have communicated and we continue to communicate the importance of them doing well checks. We are not taking temps prior to entry to school. We're doing well checks to be done at home. We had a set up in our districts. I worked with, it's been a team effort through and through. I have to say, this is a time where they have been working as a team with the school nurse coordinator, because it's a healthcare issue, and it's been very collaborative. I have never seen people work so hard. I don't normally work the summer. I have worked all summer long except for a week, and it continues to change every time you turn around. So we've been pretty flexible with trying to get that done, but we had to identify a sick, they call them isolation rooms or COVID rooms, in some of the guidance, but we decided to put a not so negative spin on it because it can be other sick children. So we identified sick rooms in our schools that had sick bathrooms associated with them. We have then a well health office. We've developed protocols on how to triage those students coming down to that, what the symptoms are going to be. We've put that information in our employee handbook to return to school, so they'll have that available to them also. We've developed a flow to the health office chart for our teachers so that they know how students will be assessed. We've been sending information about parents. Please do not send your student in sick. We'll see how well that goes. We are doing a mix, and I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm sorry I didn't tell you what kind of, how we're going back. Pre-K to 5 is going back 100%. Our middles and highs are doing hybrids. And I think there was really good thought behind that, and trying to understand that children have been away for a while. It'll be challenging, but I think, to also help parents who need to work, it's harder to teach the younger kids as independently. So currently we're doing that, but we could flip to a hybrid model if we had to, and the rates go up within the state. Right now, we've got the greatest cloud over Connecticut. I hate to say that, but our exposure is very low right now. And even when we come back, we're talking to staff and to parents that the majority of illness we're gonna see when we come back is general viral illness, not COVID. That doesn't mean we're not going to be assessing that, because we have all sorts of tools and criteria to look at. We've sent a lot of communication home to parents about the schedules, about mask wearing, about social distancing, about how the bus is going to work, about hand washing, about not sending your, I'll say it again, student into school sick. We talked to them about being flexible because this is a very fluid process. You develop something and then something changes. We inform them about a sick health office and about the well health office. We've sent home letters to parents recently about how to just give us their medications and their doctor's orders. We have encouraged people to do this online as opposed to showing up at our front door. We are limiting visitors into the buildings so that the nurse will schedule a time when they meet with the parent to drop off medications or their physical forms, those types of things. Outside the building, we have a drop box. They have an appointment, nurse goes out, masked and everything, and we'll see how that works. This is what our plan is, and we've said that. We've also asked, go ahead.
Kathy, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Came up, I don't remember exactly where, having been on so many Zoom meetings.
Sure.
My brain is probably pretty gone, but let me just ask you, in every school, my understanding is you have to have a separate isolated room for COVID students, not just the well room or whatever you're calling it for everybody.
That's our sick health. That is correct, and that is our sick health office. You don't know, and so there's criteria. Nurses this is how it will be working in Wallingford, is that we are asking that teachers call the nurse before they send somebody down, because we don't, often can be 10 children being sent down to the health office at one time. So we're trying to be able to triage them. So they're supposed to call and see if they're available, unless of course there's an emergency. And they will triage them outside the well office. They will not come into the well office until they're triaged. Obviously, it's easy if a kid just skins their knee, they can come right in. But we're trying to keep children socially distant in the health office also, well and sick. That's a whole, and we have monitors that the district has hired to monitor the children in the sick health offices. This has been very labor intensive, time intensive. Trying to find people to do that is important, because you need a monitor. You can't leave a student by themselves. So we've had to move nurses' offices to classrooms and reconfigure those. We've had to order all sorts of PPE. With parents, though, to go back, what we've sent them of what they should be bringing, having their student bring to school. Send your chapstick instead of going down to the nurse's office for chapped lips, and water bottles, and they can bring certain snacks, and change of clothes, because if they have an accident, have change of clothes.
Kathy,
yes,
I
go
have a
ahead,
question.
Sharlene.
Yeah, so that's been a concern of a lot of the nurses in our district about the isolation rooms.
Yes.
My office is so small, and no one's even approached me about isolation rooms, but I know that is part of the DPH guidelines for isolation before they get, before they're excluded. How did you do this? You moved to classrooms?
Well, there's only 2 that we had to move. We went around, we had to take over other rooms. We've taken over teachers' lounges. The superintendent and I've been meeting with them. I asked in April, I have to meet with you on a regular basis. And they wanted to do that. So we've been meeting weekly since April. Every week we have a standing meeting. We discuss what we need to do. So we identified back at the end of May, we needed to go around to every school. We worked with we had the principal there, myself, the school nurse, and we went around and identified what would be an appropriate place to have this office. And it was hard, because educators aren't always willing to give up, which I understand, their educational rooms. And so we worked together to come up with this is what the requirement is, this is what we needed to do. And so it was very, I have to say, it went really smoothly. We've had like I said, there are 2 schools where we had to move the nurse out of her office because there was no other room close to that nurse for a sick. We tried to make them the sick health office somewhat close to the nurse's office because she can't be running around the entire building. And to give you an idea, you know, last year we saw 43,000 visits, not this past year, the year before, student visits in the health office. That doesn't include staff. There are another 1,500 so staff visits. So, you know, those health offices are extremely busy, but what we're trying to do, and it'll be less though for our hybrid model schools because they're only there for a number of hours during the day. So we're not going to have all the same traffic that we used to do, but they can be very busy places. So the way in which people practice sending students to the health office, the culture has to change too.
So we discussed that. We did receive a guidelines for minor injuries and illnesses, basically keeping them in the classroom. And but I didn't know we're in ragweed season, where all the allergies are going to happen, very similar symptoms as COVID. Yes. And asthma, and how the concern was the nebulizer treatments. And the literature I read was that it was not safe to do nebulizers, but yet I have the younger kids that don't even use inhalers. So what did you guys decide on that?
Okay. So the Asthma and Allergy Network, who is a national body, does not encourage doing any nebulizers in any health office. They are not doing them in physicians' offices, so they should not be being done in school. Their take on that is that you should be able to work with their doctor to, in an ideal world, to work with their doctor.
Excuse me, Kathleen. Kathleen. All right. Yep. Hi, I'm sorry. I just need to address, we have some phone callers that have not muted themselves and we're getting a lot of background noise from you guys. If you could just take a moment to mute your cell phone, that would be great. Thank you.
So we had started in June before the nurses left. I said, if there's any students that you utilize nebulizers for, talk to the parent and say it's not going to be allowed. Talk to your physician how to medicate this child more appropriately. If they need nebulizers, they should be at home at this point. It is not safe to do that in schools. Our medical advisor he asked that we have standing orders for nebulizers in our school district. He asked that I take those standing orders out, and he would not sign them. So that is how we are doing it in Wallingford. Theoretically, you should have a negative pressure room if you're going to be doing those things. And I think they tried to be accommodating even at DPH to say, well, it'd be a separate room and you'd have to go gown, glove, mask, everything. And then you can't use that room it has to be clean and can't be used for over 12 hours. So it's not realistic to do that.
It isn't. No,
and it's not a safe procedure. So,
but my point, I guess I wanted to say is that seasonal allergies usually, mostly spring and fall, but during the winter, your triggers, then we have the asthmatics. They all present the same way. Did you come up with a protocol to exclude everybody?
No, we did not. We took yes, we did. I'm sorry. We didn't, we're not excluding everybody because first of all, the nurses, God bless them all, they're going to be assessing students. If they have a known history of allergies, that is not signs and symptoms out of their baseline. So if it's baseline and it's due to another medical reason, we will know that. We should know that. We should have that information. If it's new onset of something, that's a whole different story. So the Department of Public Health and SDE had come up with Addendum 5 to reopening Connecticut schools. And they came out with really good guidance to help us. And their COVID symptoms, even though CDC has a huge list, everything but the kitchen sink of symptoms, we are going by what DPH and SDE came out with: feeling feverish, measured temp of 100.4, chills, uncontrolled new cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, loss of taste or smell. But
going back to the temp, Kathy, just quickly, the 100.4, our guidelines right now are 100. So I'm going to present, because I saw that addendum, I went through that whole addendum, and I think that should probably be the standard. Is that how you guys are going to guide your department, your school?
Yeah, we've always had that as the standard, though we did change it when COVID started to 100. But after we're looking at everything, that is the recommendation now. But that said, just so people who aren't clinical people, an assessment includes a whole bunch of things. So you're going to say, have you traveled? Have you been exposed to somebody? Do you know if you were exposed to somebody with COVID? That's part of what nurses do. So we're going to be doing that whole assessment piece in addition to those key symptoms. Now, if somebody comes in with other symptoms that, there's things, like I said, once students come back to school, and this was discussed on the SDE and the DPH meeting last week, and I agree with it wholeheartedly. We have viral illness begins day 1 to the last day. And usually that's a nausea and vomiting bug. And so that is a potentially COVID symptom, but that's not a key symptom of COVID. So those students, we will be sending home with instructions to say, if they don't resolve in X period of time, you need to consider talking to your physician, and they cannot come back to school unless they are symptom-free for 24 hours. Now, we know that that's not going to happen all the time, but we have things in place, again, tracking students in our district. We've really worked hard. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. Are we going to make mistakes? I'm sure we will, because this is all new. And I loved, and I think, to be honest with you, people who see me around here, I say the same speech all the time. I think the hardest thing is not going to be the mask wearing as much. It's going to be the social distancing. We are social creatures. We like to be around each other. And I'll tell you a really quick story, which it was a very learning experience to me. We opened our school for summer school for a small group of students, 25. First day, I was over there because we were opening. It was new. It's during COVID, blah, 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 all that stuff. So we go over there, and nobody was really socially distant. And one of the children asked to speak to me. He was 10 years old, 10 or 12. And he said, I am very concerned. Nobody was socially distant. And I said to him, you know what? You were right. We were not as socially distanced as we should have. So to me, that was a key thing to identify to me. And I said, we need to do that better tomorrow. And we did. We did it better the next day. We can't go in there expecting we're going to do everything 100% correct all the time. This is work in progress, pivoting when you need to change things. Those flag symptoms right now, Sharlene, those may change. So,
I agree. I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, those may change again. So, but that's what we're using right now.
So let me ask this of Sharlene, and thank you both for this fabulous conversation. What's school going to look like the first day? Is it going to be pandemonium or chaos?
No, so we have our half, we're doing the hybrid, so it's half, according to the K through 8 schedule, what I was looking at, it's just going to be half home and half remote and half in the classroom. My concern was, we have to make sure the kids are in compliance of physicals and shots, and how are we going to manage that? That came down that they have to be within compliance for the summer. So that was number one. Number two, regarding medications, I mean, we're going to have to I guess we're going to be collecting like we normally do, but I guess everything will be outside because we have no visitors allowed in the building either. It's going to be quite busy because no one's been at the buildings. No one's been in their buildings.
Well, see, we've done a little differently. I mean, so there's a whole, there's a whole plan in our district. And again, it's on paper right now and people have discussed this, but we really are working very hard to make sure they're going to be staggered entrance, entering the building from the buses. They're not all coming in at the same time. They're going to be staggered in through different entrances also. And they're going to be, so that they're not all congregating in the hallway and at their lockers at the same time. So that's what's going to happen at all levels. They're going to be tried to make as much as possible when they come in, not be right one in back of another. They're supposed to be socially distant. Again, work in progress, I'm sure. They're going to be sanitizing their hands as they walk into the classroom. We have hand sanitizer in every classroom, and they have to wear masks. Everybody has to wear a mask. There are very few.
Our superintendent just put out that the preschoolers do not, and that's my whole building. So I thought it was 2 years old and younger that did not have to wear a mask, and I don't know why that was put out.
Okay, so it was put out because DPH did say children in preschool did not have to wear a mask. We knew that in our district, but we had already bought masks for them, so we're going to require it and see how it goes. I mean, we have the opportunity to not have them wear them because that is the guidance, but we are requiring it now because our teachers were concerned, and we said, well, if we're requiring it from everybody else, let's see how we go with requiring it for kids. We are building in mask breaks for kids so that they get mask breaks, and teachers, because it is a long time. You can't wear one all day long. I don't know if you've ever done it, but I'm a nurse at an assisted living facility, and I wear it a lot. And you know, you need a little break. You need to open it up on the side and take a big breath of air every now and then. So, you know, I think that's important. I see there's some questions in the chat. If somebody comes, you know, if we find out somebody, you know, gives somebody Tylenol, which is a common occurrence in the school system, and sends them to school, we will have a major conversation with that parent. And we've sent out information saying you're putting everybody else at risk to send your child to school sick. And that's basically what's happening. So we have protocols in place. That child will be assessed. If they have a temperature, they're going into the sick health office. Let's see.
I see the question regarding needing more nursing staff. Ironically, our superintendent let go of RNs and LPNs and just put on that they were going to hire one CNA for the whole district. But I'm covering now 2 buildings, and I'm like 15 minutes transportation apart from that building. I don't even know how I'm going to be able to do both the buildings. So I agree. I think we need more nurses.
Well, and part of the guidance is a nurse in every school. Part of that guidance from the state of Connecticut was a nurse in every school. And I don't know what somebody's thinking in a pandemic to decrease your healthcare staff. It is very short-sighted.
Yeah, so that's been the big problem in our district here.
Yeah, that's terrible. Sorry. That's terrible.
I know.
They don't, you know, I think it is sometimes, though. I understand we're in an educational system and we're healthcare people, and I don't think sometimes people understand what we do, and probably vice versa to some degree. But you're in a pandemic, people need to understand, even when we're not, schools need a nurse in every school. Nobody knows how to manage students who have medical issues other than the school nurse. And that is your highest standard, which it should be. If we're really concerned about taking care of children and having them ready to learn, you need a nurse in every school. That's my plug for that.
No, I totally agree. I mean, it's hard for me to triage from one bit. Sometimes it's too much. It's a lot.
Okay. Well, Marie, do you want to read a couple of the questions? Or does anybody want to speak up with a question, which is also fine?
Sure. Either I'll give a few moments for those on the phone or that would like to speak up. Liz?
Hi, everybody. Thank you. This has been very educational. I am really concerned about the nebulizer restrictions. We have fought hard in Waterbury. Our kids come to school who've lost their inhalers and so forth, and we fought very hard to have free, disposable nebulizer capsules in every school so that the kids would have access to the nebulizer. And our attendance rate is as low as it is. And this has helped keep kids in school who might otherwise. So we have to figure out a way to get around that restriction, because that's a nightmare for an urban school district with so many children. We have 20% of our kids are diagnosed with asthma, and we have worked so hard to accommodate this. So maybe I misunderstood. You said you cannot use a nebulizer in a school.
Let's talk about that, Liz. That it's being decided by each district, but clinically, if they are assessed correctly, that it should not be necessary. That's not saying they don't get their inhalers in school and with a chamber, an aero chamber, which they can use, but they have not said that you cannot do it. So if school districts are willing to do that, Liz, they have to have tremendous protocols in place to keep their staff safe. It's not,
we do.
Yeah, but we are in a pandemic.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
so
it's a lot different.
it's a lot
In the hospital,
they're not even doing
yes,
it in
a lot
certain
more.
areas of the
Like
hospital.
after a treatment like that,
Yes, they're not even doing it
in the
some areas.
hospital, basically they do, after doing a treatment, they have to clean that room and no one can go back into that room for like 70 minutes. It's just, that's not a doable.
Yeah, it's something that we're going to have to really think through, and I appreciate the seriousness of the health issues related to it. Again, it's a balancing act. So many of our kids, and Medicare, remember, Medicare only pays for one inhaler. So if they leave their inhaler at home, they don't have it in school. It's been a nightmare for us. And we were very excited pre-pandemic to be able to accommodate the kids. So it's something we're going to have to really think about, how to best serve our children. You know, it's just very different in a big urban district than smaller districts. So I appreciate the input. Now I really have to go back to the drawing board. Thanks.
So Liz, I just want to say we are 100% in favor of using nebulizers in school, but not during a pandemic. And we have to look at doing it differently. And maybe you do have to have some area in your school because of the large numbers. It's individual, but it really is putting not only the staff at risk, it's putting other students at risk. And you have to take that into consideration because it's aerosolized treatment.
And it'll travel even outside that room when the door is open. It's not like we have a special pressurized room. So that's the concern.
Well, and some schools, as you heard, don't even have a Silk Health office. So where are you doing this?
Yeah. Well, again, it's a new day and we'll have to figure this out. But I just hate to keep sending kids home who might otherwise be in school. Anyway, thank you. It's just a lot to think about and a lot to prepare for. So thank you.
Absolutely.
Marie?
Okay. So Megan asked, is it possible to share copies of the communications to parents that Ms. Neelon referenced?
I mean, they came out through the superintendent's office. I don't have all of those available to me. And I have to be perfectly honest with you now. I mean, I am flat out with all that I'm doing right now for Monday. You know, I have shared, we have a lot of the school nurses have been meeting with each other in regional groups. I've been part of an SDE task force. I have shared so much material to other nursing groups. If somebody wants to email me for a form, or I'm happy to share that. It's just I have deadlines I have to meet between now and Monday of doing a lot of presentations to staff, and also doing my regular job of orienting staff, things like that. So it's not that I'm not willing to share, but I don't have access to everything we've sent out for the last 5 months.
We can certainly follow up through the superintendent and post something to the board chair listserv. I'm sure that,
okay.
that you don't need one more task.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
We also have a question from John Prince. Is one of the questions for a child presenting with a temp later in the morning or day Did your mom give you any medication before you left for school this morning? Depending on the answer, what's the protocol, since response time is pretty important for identifying potential issues?
Yeah, I think that was answered.
Okay, let's see, what else? Let's see. Is there a way to get- Katie asked, is there a way to get more N95 masks for our nursing staff? We can only find KN95 and our nursing staff would like N95.
I don't know.
I don't know.
So they're hard to, I can help with that a little bit. They're very hard to come by. And they're being reserved for mostly inpatient medical care. That being said, the State Department of Ed and DPH, when they're having our question and answers, that we meet with them on Tuesdays, so that it really is not necessary to have an N95 if you're not with somebody who is profusely coughing, that you think are around them, have close contact. Close contact is within 6 feet for greater than 15 minutes. So, and we have face shields we're going to give our staff in our sick health office. Face shields, gloves, gowns are available. And we are told, my medical advisor, our health department director, the state of Connecticut has said that's acceptable and they should back off if they're going to be longer. But most of our interventions can be done within a 15-minute period of time. If they're sitting in a sick health room, we have enough room in there that they can be 6 feet distance. We're going to be telling them to step out of the office for a little bit so that, again, they're not in constant contact. And we're hoping, say prayers for us, that parents pick them up and take them home. But we tried to get them too, but, and they do, especially if we're coming into flu and potentially more COVID, they want those reserved for healthcare facilities.
Okay.
That's the general guidance.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
At this point, I want to thank our two speakers and all of those who you represent. It's so obvious from Kathy and Sharlene how difficult it is going back to school, how many things there are to consider. And sometimes we don't see enough of what is really happening on the ground, either as when you're on a board, certainly us at CABE. I want to thank Sheila McKay for bringing Sharlene and Kathy here for us today. And I want to thank them profusely in their districts for what you're doing, what you shared with us, and how helpful it's been. So thank you again.
You're very welcome.
Welcome.
Very welcome.
Yeah.
Thank
Good
you
luck
all.
with everybody. Stay healthy.
Yes, be well. Be well. Thank you all.
Take care.
Thanks for
Thank you.
inviting us.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Patrice, the chair share.
All right, chairs, this is your opportunity. Challenges, successes, unresolved issues. I'm sure there are none of those in any of your districts. But anything that we can help you with or that you can help each other with.
Patrice, I have a question, if that's okay.
Go ahead, Candace.
Thank you. I'm just curious about the recent communication from the WEA asking to delay school. Is this something that we should be worried about? I mean, in our district, we have not been getting that from our teachers so far, but I wasn't sure what I should take from that, like statewide thing.
We certainly worry about that, like we worry about so many things. Many of the districts we're aware do have good reopen plans that their teachers have participated in developing. I think as a statewide union, it's fair to say that the CEA has been under pressure from some of its members to take a strong position. I don't understand, having been on many calls and webinars about appropriate reopening plans, I don't understand what 2 more weeks would due for most districts. Many districts have actually delayed school opening by at least a week because many of you were going to open before Labor Day. And now many of you are opening in some form on September 8th. So I would say if you feel you have a good plan in place and you're not getting local, this issue is not being raised by your local union, I think you're in a good position to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Fingers crossed.
And we haven't heard anything from the State Department or the governor backing that call for a 2-week delay from CEA.
Megan has asked whether the state could require districts to delay school opening. That's an interesting question because the governor's emergency executive orders expire, and the powers that he has assumed during this crisis expire on September 9th. So it's an open question as to whether he would declare another state of emergency in order to continue to be able to make those kinds of declarations.
I have a question. We have DACO here in Windsor, and I'm hearing through the grapevine that the drivers are planning on striking. Have any other school districts heard about that here in the northern part of the state, or is that impacting the whole state?
Hi, this is Megan up in Woodstock, and we have DACO as well, and I have not heard that, but it's certainly something that I'll be turning around and asking my superintendent probably as soon as I get off this call.
Okay.
Are they Teamsters, do you know?
Say that again, John?
Are they Teamsters? Who represents the DACO drivers, or are they multiple bargaining units across the state?
I don't know.
Just curious.
I don't know. We have heard in other calls that some of the bus companies are having many of their drivers resign or retire, but we have not heard about a organized strike.
All right, I'll take that back to my superintendent.
So I just want to mention, this isn't so much a question, but in Brantford, we met last night and had a 3+ hour, mostly virtual meeting. Several board members were in person. All the administrators were present and responsive to questions posed by public who participated by call-in. My understanding, the chairman and our state rep co-moderated and received something on the order of 700 questions, many of which were repeats, which they managed really quite well. And another thing that happened during the course of that meeting, I monitored a narrated presentation that was on the district's website, which within 24 hours had over 1,300 views. And during the course of the meeting, that number grew to 1,420. So there's a lot of access to good quality information. We did get some heat for not sort of closing the door on all the information and making it perfect for everybody, which is unheard of anyway. But I think the image that was conveyed last night was one of deep concern, extraordinary planning by the entire district team, that every single question was answered fully and completely. And I think it allayed a lot of the concerns of the community who had reason to be concerned. So the only one other note that I made, because I haven't heard anybody talk about this yet, one of our components of our plan is that there will be no locker use in either the intermediate school or the high school. So that's going to be a challenge to deal with. You know, kids will bring their book bags into the classroom, which obviously have been reduced dramatically in size.
Thanks, John. I think what you've articulated is what we've talked about on many of these calls, the importance of communication, and the recognition that flexibility has to be something that everyone in the school community accepts. the need for flexibility. Liz has shared that Waterbury has plans for a health person in each school and a designated COVID liaison for each school. And Michelle Embry-Koo wonders whether, while distance learning is in response to the pandemic, whether there's talk of allowing distance learning for weather-related school cancellations. Not at this point. Personally, I think we all need at least one snow day this year, like a real snow day back in the old days where there weren't any meetings. And that's just a personal observation. Who else wants to share? Quiet group this morning.
I'm willing to share. I guess we're all beat up.
Yeah.
I was wondering how many districts are having any difficulty with having a memorandum of agreement with the teacher union right now being pushed by CEA. We certainly are here in East Granby. And we have a safe reopening plan that meets all the metrics. And I just wonder in how many other districts, if they've had difficulties or whether they even had a memorandum agreement come up. I mean, we have one with almost 50 items. And we've got a very good reopening plan. So I was just wondering, what the sense around the state was, because it seems to be being pushed quite a bit. Yesterday, I read in a paper today about the article about the protest yesterday, and at the end where it said who the protest was organized by, it had a listing of different organizations, and the CEA wasn't one of them. And I thought it was peculiar that yesterday I was in Massachusetts, and I drove down one side of the highway, and there were about 50 people out there with signs saying, support the kids, open up the schools, blah, blah, blah. And then I came back up the other side of the highway, and there were 50 people, and they were teachers with signs up, we're not going back till it's safe. And then I read yesterday, New Hampshire, the same thing happened. So it doesn't seem to be a coincidence that this isn't just organized by, groups around town. So I was just wondering what kind of difficulties they have, because we're a small district, and maybe CEA thinks they're going to try to muscle in and make it difficult for us, because, looking at what they would like, it makes it very difficult for us to open up on time in another week. So I just wonder what the sense was out there, because we, again, put a lot of effort, a lot of time this summer, a lot of thought, a lot of discussion, and with certainly community support, are looking to open up in a hybrid plan. So until Columbus Day. And then hopefully we could, pivot full time, or, when the flu season comes back in, we're probably going to be pivoting to remote, but gives us an opportunity to work on both and at least have the kids meet the teachers before we go remote. I'm just looking from an education point of view that's extremely important for the kids to at least meet the teachers, and then it needs to happen. It's not going to get any better than our metrics are in Connecticut right now. It's not going to get better than this. So again, sorry for going on, but I think we've been beat up this week, and I just wanted to get a feel what's going on in other towns. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, Bob. We were on a call yesterday where the CEA did say that those demonstrations in Hartford yesterday were not CEA events. I don't know whether any of their local affiliates were part of that, perhaps, or not. In terms of the MOUs, we know that going all the way back to June, the CEA did have that long list of about 50 items that they were attempting to bargain. At that point, districts were able to clearly say, well, it's premature to even talk about these because we don't have a reopening plan. So we don't know what that's going to look like. So other chairs on the call, do you have, has the CEA local been pressing for an MOU?
I'm wondering, John Prince from Brantford, how much the response statewide is a function of who your council happens to be. We have council that has made our response extremely reasonable, and we've entertained conversations throughout with the union president, but have been able to avoid actually entering into the bargaining process, which is fraught with timeframes and the ticking clock. So I would imagine that the responses are limited to how many council are responding in what ways. Just a thought.
That certainly is a possibility. Others?
Yeah, this is Andy George in Stanford. We're meeting with the union on Monday, but oddly, they've given us a one paragraph demand to bargain, but they haven't told us what they're looking for. So we're tempted to, I don't know, we're caught with like, should we be proactive, which is not something I would normally do, start offering things up, but I would think we'll wait and see. We have a pretty good relationship, but on this issue, I can imagine there are going to be some hardliners and such that, want some form of either compensation or accommodation for things that are happening.
Liz observes that in Waterbury, the unions have been cooperative for their September 8th planned opening.
Yeah, and this is Julie again.
Julie, go ahead.
Oh, we've got the same issue with an MOU that has a list of 40 some odd items, of which our superintendent could agree to 4. So I know we're working with our board attorney to have responses to that, and I think he's planning that we'll be opening school without an MOU in place.
I don't know if I can come in.
If someone on the phone is talking, we're not able to hear you. Leonard, did you want to speak?
I just wanted to say our union has been working with us since graduation and been with the way, so we've not received that type of pushback. If anything, they're very supportive of what we're trying to do and actually resisting CEA at this point.
Excellent.
I can tell you in Woodstock, we have had a really good relationship with all of our unions, fortunately. All this just happens to coincide at the same time as we are supposed to be starting negotiating our next 3-year contract with our teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So we did receive requests from them for an MOA, but right now our superintendent and our board attorney is talking with our union president and their representation. So, and from what I can tell, it's going very well as starting out any negotiations we have for this next teacher contract, which right now we're looking at is really extending it by 1 year rather than going into a 3-year negotiations.
That's exactly what Brantford is doing. Same situation.
It makes a lot of sense because diverting energy and focus away from the business of educating students this fall seems like the wisest thing to do. Any final comments from board chairs?
I guess the only thing I'd say is good luck, everyone.
Yes. Well, with that concluding comment, it is exactly noon. We will look forward to talking with you next Thursday at 11 a.m. And until then, on behalf of the CABE staff, be safe and be well. Thank you.
Bye now. Be safe.
Bye-bye.